Okay. Hello, everyone. Day 3 of trying to give an episode. Please excuse the coughs and additional noises. And I hope this episode can contribute to the greatness of the human species. So, dear viewers, I wanted to speak about the ideal of heroism. What is heroism? And this sentence arose to me: when will the world learn to protect its heroes? And usually it's the other way, where heroes protect the world. And in 2023, we're living at a time, especially as someone living in Canada, where, and anybody who pays attention online to what's going on, in, let's say, global online consciousness. And so what's happening is the human being is questioning how it's identifying with reality, and times are changing. I wondered about what is it that every generation, became softer and softer and softer, right? And when you look at history, it's like we were savage men who would go to war, men who it didn't matter how they felt when the kingdom was at siege. When your kingdom was being attacked, you were in some sense, part of the defense, part of the offense. You were in some sense, called forth by just the moment, But nowadays, right, we don't have that kind of, let's say, that kind of man who just grabs a sword and goes to the battlefield. And I wondered what has changed. What has changed from traditional archetypes to modern archetypes, and what has been going on, and could there have been some sort of rug being pulled from underneath our feet, right? And so for a long time I was wondering, what is it? Is this creature becoming more intelligent, and then relying on intelligence more than, let's say, brute force? But you know what I realized? Anyways, guys, I'm just trying to check and see if this is audible. It should be. Okay, the audio's fine. It's all good. What I'm trying to build towards, what I'm trying to share with the viewers, is that obviously there has been, transformations in how the human being behaves. But to me, I thought about, when was it in history that to be, in some sense, let's say, that powerful masculine archetype, or I'm even thinking of how to even say it. Back in the day, it's kind of like the mind of the human being wasn't you can say wasn't evolved enough to be able to comprehend the intensity of danger. Do you know? I wondered, when did that energy, which was useful in the outer realms, when did the wilderness, the intensity, the animalistic instinct of the human being fade, right? And I realized, I think the human species, some people say, like for example, when they talk about masculinity or chivalry in some sense, as a form of masculinity, some people say chivalry is dead, and some women say chivalry is dead, and some men say women killed it. Do you know? But I was looking at this whole situation, and I think the moment we had the consideration of a subjective law, that part of the human psyche that was strengthening itself kind of dismissed itself. Do you know, it's so different being a person like born like Tarzan, like being a child raised in the forest, in the wilderness, right? And then being a human being that's raised in a safe world, right? We right now, our laws and technologies has allowed the human being to step out of the food chain, and we have felt so superior compared to all the other species on this planet that we have centered the meaning of reality only on the human perspective. But anyways, what I'm trying to say, when men, or let's say that warrior spirit, it's not just men. When I talk about here, instead of just focusing on masculinity, femininity, something that was beyond both was in some sense heroism. And throughout history, there has been many different kinds of people, many different heroes. How many human beings, how many heroes acknowledged by history, and how many heroes never acknowledged by history? Silent champions of humanity. Do you know? There's many. There's so many. And those are the real heroes, I find. Those who, from the beginning, it was as if they were meant for another world. That's the poetry of it. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that, different traditions in just we as human beings, in the evolution of the human being, we can see that conditions were tougher, more intense, so the human being had to adjust to the toughness, right? But now we have technologies, we have subjective technologies such as laws and whatnot, and because we're in a system that is acting as our guardian, we don't think about guarding ourselves. That's what I'm trying to say. Do you know? What caused the human species to become softer than its world's conditions was the illusion for I don't know how, but it's like something has allowed us not to use our energy in the same way that we were using it in the past. And I thought about what is causing, let's say, fear, or not just fear, but in some sense, like, what is causing, like, if a man back in the day didn't doubt himself, what is causing a man to doubt himself now? And I think it's reliance. I think I think that there's roles to play in existence. Existence often gives us our role. And we stay in the same role until our context and value changes. I want to read for the viewers the definition of heroism. Here it says a hero is a real person or a main fictional character who, in the face of danger, combats adversity through feats of ingenuity, courage, or strength. Like other formerly gender-specific terms, hero is often used to refer to any gender, though heroine only refers to women. Yeah. See, the thing is, like, heroism has nothing to do with what you are. It has to do with what you do. And that's what I want to say, right? That the species right now in 2023, at least to Mr. Within, it seems that that's the conflict. You see, heroism is an action, and it's an action that its value is there regardless. If a dog, I saw a video where this dog saved this young kid from another dog that was attacking it. That's heroism. Do you know? It's a force, it's a spirit, it's something that cares for what is there, right? And when we see civilization falling or collapsing, or any inefficiency, it's because people have stopped caring or are caring less. You see, back in the day, people felt they were new to the world. They felt the world was a place they could explore. But nowadays, people are born just, nervous if they're acting properly or not. You see, normality destroyed diversity. And it's bizarre, right? Because human beings need to have a common language, and what we consider normality, of course, in different cultures is different, but it's a behavioral language. Do you know? I've noticed something, and this is why I said the title. You see, human beings through, let's say, technology and media are getting access. That means back in the day, let's say you were in a village, there were 100 people in your village, that's all you knew. Now the world has become a giant village, okay? And what does that mean? That means one individual that is existing to themselves in a certain way and is expressing themselves in a certain way can exist to others in so many different ways. Right? And so we have to be careful that often when we see people, we are seeing the limited angles we have of them. And this is why I'm saying, when will the world learn to protect its heroes? Because it is way easier to condemn than to, in some sense, what do they say? It's like harder to build a house of cards, and it takes 1 second to destroy them. And what I'm seeing in this modern age is that human beings from different walks of life, they put efforts in their lifetime. They reach certain positions, right? And due to, let's say, the emotional conflict of interpretation of identity of that individual, then in some sense the house of cards breaks. You see what I think? You know what I think is going to happen? All those people who have been canceled or they have been censored due to their speech, what's going to happen is most likely they're going to be reimbursed or they're going to be paid. Do you know? Because you see, sometimes I think about the responsibility of others and the responsibility of the individual and the responsibility of the governmental system, right? So we are not just individuals living on an island, we're individuals living in a specific system. And this system keeps getting bigger and bigger. Do you know? That means if you're just a regular person, you're just thinking about your tomorrow. But if you're a politician, a leader of a nation, you're thinking of the tomorrow of the world. You see the difference? The scales change. Once the context expands, and we human beings have limited our context, and we have conditioned the younger generation to, in some sense, be so fragile that instead of changing themselves, they rather change the world, right? And that is, I don't want to say it's good or bad, but the world fights back, not people. You see, I don't know why, but for me, this planet is alive. This world is alive. My whole moment is alive. You know? And people are going to be like, Mr. Within, you think a rock in space is alive? And I'll tell you, it is as alive as my eyes are. Do you know? And so what we treat is actually every person's behavior to anything outside of them is actually simultaneously being a behavior to what is within them. You know, imagine Superman, or we see it in movies, right? We see it like in Batman movies or Superman. I don't know which Batman it was, but there was one Batman movie where the Joker was like looking at Batman and he was like telling Batman, you're a freak like me too, and they're gonna end up hating you. And I wondered, what is it? Why is it that when some incredible human being arises in the global situation, this incredible human being diminishes? Why is it that many great human beings have in some sense left the world too soon? And let me explain to you what it is, dear viewers. What it is that anything we spend a long time looking at, our brain will give us different context for. For example, these Mr. Within talks you're hearing, you know, if you listen to them long enough, there's going to probably come a day where you're going to hate me, you're going to love me, you're going to want nothing to do with me, then you're going to want to know more. Do you see what I'm saying? So what it is anything that repeats, the brain gets bored of having the same impression, so creates a new opinion. Now, if somebody comes into the public eye and they are good at first, people are going to be like, look at this good person. But after a couple years, their attention goes on all the things that they missed at first. So this is why they say, like, if you show your dark side first, then people are left to only know your bright side, right? For example, I didn't come across that way. I came across nice from the beginning. So, and if I do something bad in the future, people are gonna be like, yo, this guy's not the guy we thought he was. Do you know? But what it is it's the nature of our intelligence to not be satisfied with just one angle of approach to the moment, but that there is something within the moment that seeks to know itself from multiple angles. And so, do you know when the world will protect its heroes? When it will realize its heroes are the world. You see, it's not all human beings on this planet putting an effort to live here. You know, I honestly thought, like, one day I was like, okay, how many people actually want to live on Earth? And how many people are forced to? How many human beings don't like being in this place, but they have to? Right? But how many people are in this place and they love it here? And I ask myself, what can I love as a being when my consciousness, due to the nature of a changing universe, changes? How can I love a changing world? And also, how can I love when I'm a changing self? And you see, dear viewers, the species needs to graduate into stop acknowledging individuals as nouns, as singular nouns, just from one dimension, but to realize that what we think is an individual has meaning in multiple angles. We are multidimensional verbs, and you cannot judge a verb. You know, in religious traditions, they have an incredible saying. If somebody says, Mr. Within, what's the most beautiful idea, religious idea you've heard? And I will tell you, this is the idea, okay? It was like, it made me tear up when I heard it, but it was so beautiful. And so the idea is this, right? That there was this person saying that when somebody sins, you might be there to see the sin, but you might not be there to see their repentance. And so that's the thing, dear viewers. Whoever you are on this planet, whoever you have judged, however way you have held, you know, the judge's hammer or the executioner's axe, you know, whoever you are, and I'm talking about like identity destruction, like in regards to modern media and the whole, you know, cancel culture and everything. Right? Because you know what it is? This human species just got a little break. Okay? From the savageness of fighting off other beasts to the problem of not having the adequate and efficient tools and technologies for basic survival. Now that we have basic survival, the species has the luxury for depression, for emasculation, for avoidance of responsibility. And the future generations don't even know. This is the sad thing about the world, okay? The saddest thing about the world is that new beings enter it and they seek freedom, but they don't know what happened before. And so it's hilarious because every human being is reinventing the wheel. That's what it means to incarnate. You start from scratch and the world has given you one more time. Look at yourself again. You see, it's the rage. The rage, I would say not a rage of an ego. You see, there is a rage where the person just dislikes something and then the rage comes. But there's a rage where the moment has a justice resonance. Like there is a decency required in the human experience. And if this decency is in some sense, it is absent, I will tell you, the only thing that is keeping us human is how we care for our future as human beings. And if they distract you from your future, they have taken away the road. You see? And I thought, what is it? Is the New Age community being fools? Like there was a time I got angry at enlightened people, You know why I got angry? Because I felt we have not come into this world to just realize we're oneness. We have not come into this world to just realize it's empty. We have not come into this world just to think it's like a dualistic heaven and hellhole. We have not come into this world to think it's just an infinite place. We have come here to realize we are noticing all these dimensions at once. And what we are as a being, you might not believe it, dear viewer, but there is a chance that fear does not apply to what we are. That means what I know I can fear, its absence or whatnot. Like right now, I know I am a body. So if something happens, I can notice the absence. But when you don't know what you are, and then something changes, you don't know what changed, right? Human beings, I think every human being that is born, they are in relationship with a type of force. Just like we have different DNA, I think that gives us access to different rhythms. And do you know, like, what kind of civilization will protect its heroes? A civilization that understands it is better to have an advanced human species rather than what? Mindless fools, like what idiot elite person wants to control masses of people? Do you know? Like sometimes I think about power and I think about how have people thought about power, right? They have thought that power is control. Which is in some cases, sure. I mean, whoever has the bigger club, people listen to him, right? But the true power is when you realize you cannot lose your power. And when you realize you cannot lose your power, you can give it till the end of time. This is the power of the divine. The divine doesn't have limits in time. It enters time, but it doesn't have limits in time. And you know what's a beautiful thought? As I'm giving this talk, how many eyes are just looking at moments? And there will come a time, I feel, where every human being will experience heroism. I think it's part of like the cycle, karmic cycle. It's like you've entered a theme park. Unless you've gone on all the rides, you feel incomplete. So the whole reason human beings or like some unknown intelligence is trapped in this temporary endless reanimation cycle is because it feels it's incomplete. And we think that knowledge will complete us, but in some sense that's not the case. When we realize the unknown is complete unto itself, when Carl Jung said, unless you make the unconscious conscious, you will, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. I think the other approach is that rather than making the unconscious conscious, you realize the conscious is the unconscious. You see, what are the options? There's pretty much two options here. You either know yourself as a being or you don't. If you don't know yourself as a being, it's another way of saying that you're not being yourself. If you look at creatures in nature, when they are their self, they know how to move. They don't doubt. But when they are something else, they don't know how to move. You put a lion like in a field and the lion knows how to be a lion. You put a lion in a cage and the lion is in some sense delionizing, being delionized, you know? I like that word, you know, the delionization of the greatness of the species. And you know, I had this feeling, sometimes I think this is from my ego, but there's moments where I feel there are forces against humanity, and a part of me feels this kind of smiling anger. So let me explain to you what I mean. You see, imagine somebody comes to your house and they want to start trouble, right? Or somebody's bothering or here, I'll tell a story, very incredible story. This story is from Dana White, who is the founder of the UFC. And pretty much he was living in Las Vegas with his single mother. He was 13. There was this neighbor that was bothering his like shouting at his single mother, right? And so Dana White, this 13-year-old kid, goes up to him and shouts in such an intensity, right, that guy gets so scared that he never disturbs them again, right? Like that was a moment of him realizing he has the ability, he has that power to administer the moment, to change the moment, right? Men nowadays don't feel they have the power because they feel the power has to be given from outside of them. This has been the secret, really, you know? Power, we can say it has two sources. Let me tell you why. Because there's two states our intelligence is happening. Right now, I'm a body projecting a mind, but I'm simultaneously a mind moving a body. Okay? The world will protect its heroes when it realizes it can't risk losing them. You see, human beings don't have that much events. Back in the day, there were like intense events going on. Do you know? But nowadays, things have become so gentle, and we're trying to replicate that intensity electronically or digitally. But it'll never be the same, you know? Like a soldier running in the battlefield with a sword is going to be a completely different experience than a soldier in a video game with a sword, right? And the person playing the video game is very fearless, but the person in real life has fear. And check this out: when you know you can't lose, your fear goes away. But if you think you can lose, your fear is there. if, like the Buddha, you realize that this world is free beyond its appearance, that means it appears like a simulation, it appears like a cycle, reincarnation cycle, but it's not actually that. That's its surface. Once you befriend the spirit and the currents and the rhythms of the planet gives you a corner. So what it means is that think of the planet as being alive, and think about, out of all the human beings that have lived, maybe a very small percentage of human beings have actually acknowledged this planet as alive. They've acknowledged the planet. I'll give you an example. Imagine somebody comes into the room, you've never met them before, so what do? You acknowledge them. You say, hey, what's up, what's your name? You acknowledge. You acknowledge their existence, right? But how many people are acknowledging the existence of life being a force that is on a planetary scale, not on an individual scale? See, life didn't just happen for one person. One creature wasn't alive. The event took place around the earth. And so the clue is obvious. For me, the biggest obvious clue, you know where human consciousness comes from? It comes from geometrical code in sunlight. Sunlight raised us. You know, the earth had the seed, and the light hit it, and the seed in some sense sprouted. Now we could think of, like, a next level seed. I don't know. For me, I have this feeling, that story of Dana White I was telling you, it's this feeling that this is your species, dear human beings. This is your greater family. And so what if your family is being hurt? Do you know? And nowadays, there is the whole conservative view against the liberal view. Do you know? And there's this whole thing about universities, like the liberal agenda, the conservative agenda. One side is trying to stay traditional, the other side is trying to, in some sense, be modern and all-encompassing. And you know what I thought? I thought about that, nowadays it seems that people think the ideology of, like, feminism and stuff is like, feminism is saying masculinity is toxic, but it seems like in culture it's having a backlash. I don't know what the term is, but it seems like people are thinking now feminism is toxic. Okay? But for me, how do I say it? Even though there is toxicity, there is the embrace of all. You see, and unless the human species finds contentment with the human species, it will not have the capacity to acknowledge other beings. Extraterrestrials, if there are any, will not land until we stop our species civil war. Extraterrestrials are like, look at these monkeys, they're killing each other. What, we want to go and talk to them? So what? So monkeys can kill us? No extraterrestrial wants to come on a planet with unevolved beings who would be afraid of it and kill it instantly. Right? We have to advance. The species has to see beyond the archetypes that it has been in only. You see, but it must not be delusional either. Right? And so what we need is the greatest minds on the planet to assemble. The United Nations need to ask all the greatest scholars and thinkers of its nation to group up, and for the first time we need a global assembly of philosophers wondering about the ideological constitution of what the global collective structure needs to mean. Right? It's a puzzle that every nation, it's like the future gave our species homework, and the homework was to learn to live as one species and be a great species, an advanced species, right? But instead, all the nations got the homework, they looked at the problem, they didn't finish the homework. Do you know? What it is, of course, it's resource allocation, it's egos at war. What really being a human being is you're like this biochemical mechanism that harbors a subjective value system. This subjective value system allows you to not just interpret the moment in one way, but in multiple ways. Now, in this changing world that we're changing, sometimes I wonder, what is the task of leaders? We should have every person on the planet, sign a petition, right? All the people of all the nations sign a petition that in some sense your nation has to, in the time span of 20 years or 50 years, completely get rid of violent means. Why? Because the human being has accessed intelligence. You see, there is a reason the traditional violent masculinity, which was necessary and which got us here, is in some sense fading. Why? Because the energy of the being can rely on subjective law for protection. So the energy of the being doesn't have to go with just becoming like a warrior. The person can be like, okay, I could be safe and do other things. You see, and so what has happened, it's not that masculinity is forgotten, but it's that the context, the expectation, the context of the world has from you is different, And I don't know. All I know is that it's not easy being a human being. It takes a lot of energy to live, And when human beings coordinate their effort, right, and suddenly, we dishonor those who climbed the mountain. Imagine somebody climbed a mountain alone, and at the top of the mountain a bunch of people were like, or imagine somebody climbed a mountain, right? They got to the top, but they had a rope connected from their back to the bottom of the mountain. And the people at the bottom of the mountain were like, you're not perfect enough to climb the mountain. Bam! And they push them down. And so what it is that all human beings are seeking greater dimensions, because why else would we be in a changing world? What else is there to see? We're living for the new, and we're suffering from the old, even though the old stops existing the moment we notice a new, the next moment. I asked myself, I wondered about my heroes, right? And to be honest, when I was younger, a lot of my heroes were soccer players. It's just this feeling that greatness should be cared for. And we're living in a hilarious world, We're living in a world where it's actually incredible. Why? Because new personalities arise, new human beings arise, and regardless of the problem, care for our heroes, And it depends on who you are. You might be a religious person and your hero is a prophet, You might be a gangster and your hero is a thug, right? But what heroism truly means is that a being that is capable of recognizing its ability to influence the moment. I've experienced moments of heroism hilariously. I'll share with the viewers. One time in 2015, I was in UK Birmingham. It was early in the morning. And what do you call it? It was early in the morning. I was walking to the ATM, and it was like maybe 4:30 a.m., something like that. And I was walking in the street, and there were no cars in the street, and I was the only one in the street, right? There was literally no cars, no people on the street, and I was just walking alone, right, to this ATM. And I remember I saw this sign that had fallen, this wooden sign, this big wooden sign that had fallen on the street. And it was such a weird moment because I was like, what? Has no car driven on this road? Right? So I remember I run and I pull that thing. I pull this giant wooden thing that had fallen on the street. right? And I pull it to the sidewalk, and I felt like a hero for a moment. What it is we need kindness. We need to understand it's everybody's alive for the first time. Everybody's meeting themselves for the first time. Everybody's trying to figure out, in what way their life force has meaning. And at the same time, regardless of our individual convictions and acceptances and whatever, we're living in an outer realm that surpasses just our beliefs. Do you know? And it's strange, it's like imagine you put 8 billion people in a crowded room and you told them to dance. It's a party, right? And some people are like, I can't dance, I don't like this party. But some people are still like, moving their body to the beat, right? And I feel really what it is life is kind of like a soundtrack, and you're like, it's not a musical soundtrack. It's a visual soundtrack, and you're kind of like happening alongside it, If I think from my inner realms, the world is happening to me. If I think from the outer realms, I'm happening to the world. Excuse me. When I think from the inner realms, I'm happening to the world. When I think about the outer realms, the world is happening to me. So, when will the world protect its heroes? When it realizes it has no reason to hurt them. It has maybe a reason to correct them, right? Like, what I think needs to happen is that if somebody makes a mistake and they're like a famous celebrity, right? There needs to just be a discussion, there needs to be like a, not an interview where the guy's being harassed to like forcefully apologize, but just in some sense a conversation or an explanatory video, It's a strange world, we don't know if we should be responsible only for our own emotions, for the emotions of others, or for the emotions of the whole world. For example, Iran is a theocratical society. It's the country I was born in, and one person is choosing how everybody should feel about the context of their nation. You see? Iran is a dictatorship, so that it's like there never was a choice that much. And some people might say, Mr. Within, why are you saying this? But let me tell you, why the country of Iran has this whole Islamic, the Islamic Revolution happened? It's because the reason Iran is a worse place than 1979 and 1980s is because they were not grateful for their royalty. Shame, man. It's kind of like people let go of the potential of greatness too soon. We accepted defeat too soon, so now we're suffering for no reason. Let me tell you something about this world. When I'm saying it's easier said than done, okay? I'll share something personal. So Persian families are big families, usually. Long story short, a relative of mine, an aunt of mine, she gets into this conflict with her husband, and what happens is, so she's my aunt on the mother's side. So when her husband, she fights with her husband, and she comes and tells the whole family her husband abused her. Okay? So the whole family, I don't know why, it was such a weird vibe, right? But the whole family kind of disowned this guy who since my childhood was there, right? And it was this feeling where it was as if people don't think for themselves when it comes to judgment. Do you know? It's like they rather do what everyone else is doing to feel safe rather than actually thinking about the scenario from the beginning, right? And I felt really bad because I didn't do anything either. You know, I went with the crowd. I thought I felt that guy was a bad guy, but then we realized we realized my aunt was a liar. Do you know? And so that's the thing, guys. You know, the impressions we have of people can change, but they can also be restored quickly. You know, we don't know. There's so many angles to look at things. You know, I've even for an individual, do you know how many angles I've looked at myself? There's been days I've woken up and I've disliked who I am. There's days I've woken up, I've liked who I am. You know, there's been moments where I've censored myself. You know? There's moments where I've encouraged myself. See, different angles to yourself, different angles to others, different angles to the world. When we can become content with this multidimensionality, the species is closer to its advancement because it is allowing its freedom to be, it's allowing its consciousness to be as expansive as the more dimensions it finds. You see? Life is not just a behavioral thing. It's not like life is not handwriting homework. It's not like, you know, when I was young, this teacher of mine, you know, I can't say if I hate her or not. I was in grade 2 or 3, and this teacher, she had printed like cursive handwriting, right? Cursive handwriting like sheets, where there was like a transparent outline of how you should write it. And at the time, I was so young, I didn't realize this lady had made so many extra copies that she had given me the extra copies. So when I went home, I had 20 pages and I thought this was my handwriting homework, okay? Oh, man. If there was a camera, surveillance camera, like since my childhood, and it could have filmed like my life till this point, I think the viewers would laugh. It would be like maybe like one of those award-winning comedy films. And whoever you are, let's say a hero of you has done something wrong. One of your heroes has done something wrong. And you don't know what to do, you know? And I would say, as much as people have an ability to make mistakes, they also have an ability to correct them. You see, that's the thing about human beings. We can give and we can take. Sometimes we take. What do? You give. If it's unjust, you know. People are different. You know, when I was in high school, there were these kids who were stealing from like the cafeteria. Do you know? And for me, I'm a person who, even if I borrow somebody's pen accidentally, like I dislike having that. Do you know? Like I gotta give it back to them. Do you know? And natures are different, you know. Some people, I guess they're, you know, if you're insensitive, it's okay. You know, you could treat the world like a punching bag. People are just being born trying to copy the exact handwriting. You know, how many, like, to be honest, even though we don't have cloning technology, psychologically, how many freaking clones are there? You see, like when I see the fans, like the fans of like some celebrities, like concerts and stuff, like super fans, I look at that and I'm like, have you forgotten you're alive here? Do you know? it to me, it feels like people want to express something. They also want their expression to be acknowledged, but they also want to be different. You see, and this is something weird in psychology. I think the weaker you assume yourself to be, the more you just want to fit in and you don't want to disturb. But the stronger you are, the more you feel you're worthy of your authenticity. Like, how many people on the planet don't feel they can be themselves? You know? And I'm not talking about like in society. Of course, in society, there's a, it's like, they could give Oscar awards to everybody on the planet when you talk about outer realm society. It's theater. It's so much of life, human behavior is theatrical, and it's more like the brain is finding a strategy and implementing it rather than the brain actually being that, being itself, right? Because I realize this, so many people act on this planet like there's this whole, it started from wolves, like there was the alpha gorilla, like the giant gorilla, and then there were the beta gorillas, or the alpha wolf and the beta wolves and all this, right? And if you notice, somebody becomes a follower when they don't feel they can be responsible. They cannot be responsible for themselves. Because whose responsibility is truth? I understand the allure of like enlightened gurus and divine individuals, right? It's like, oh my God, is that a halo around that guy's head? Humanity. Love yourself while you can, while you're still human, while you're natural. And when the species can give more than it takes, both in the inner realms and outer realms, greatness will walk towards us. You see, it's a behavior. You see, some people may think the technology of the human being is based on the innovation of individuals, but no, it's our behavior as a species. I will tell you, if somehow, let's say, okay, hypothetically, futuristic example, let's say an enlightened Andromedan extraterrestrial from the Andromeda galaxy, I don't know why, but in my science fiction, extraterrestrials, like Andromedans, are enlightened beings in my science fiction. So imagine an extraterrestrial Andromedan enlightened being comes on Earth, and very benevolent, very compassionate, very free being, has no desire. And then we tell this being, help us, our species is killing itself, help us, And so imagine this Andromedan extraterrestrial snaps its fingers, and in one instant, the context of what the world means shifts for everybody on the planet. Do you know? We have come into a world from a position of non-existence. Not only should everybody be extremely happy that you're existing, do you know? But also that, why do you fear where you have come from? I wondered about this. Why am I fearing death? Before I was a child, I was nothing. I didn't exist. Before I feared my existence, there was no existence to fear. You see, and what we fear is how we stop existing, I think. Not the actual death. We're not afraid of death. We're afraid of dying. The dying process, And some beings are different. You read about yogis and mystics and these sadhus in the Himalayas, and they were so conscious, so alert, so beyond just their shape, that they would mahasamadhi. And mahasamadhi, you know what it means? You know how Tony Stark leaves the Iron Man suit? How casually he leaves the Iron Man suit? The ancient yogis, those who would do mahasamadhi, would do that. Why? Because they knew Earth isn't the only room. Because we think this is it, we have fear of this place. But when you realize this is not it, There are dimensions that are alive, which are within you, which are added to the world, and there are also dimensions to the outer realms, but they're dehumanized. And still, if somebody was like Mr. Within, where did the geometry of the design of the human being come from? It came from an intervening force. What it is that life in this universe did not start in this universe. It was brought here. This is why the world can't explain our consciousness, the mystery of it. It's not from here. Most likely we're antennas and it's being broadcast. Just like I'm live streaming this talk. How do you think, these words are arising? They're just arising. It's like they're there. So many things we think we have to bring our conscious. Like, check this out. You think you have to make the unconscious conscious Jungian style. But when you realize there's no such thing as the conscious individualism, which is the simulation, then you don't fear the unconscious. That means it's as if somebody is like Mr. Within, who were you before this life? I'll be like universal beings are nameless. Universal beings don't have a name. They don't need names. Names are just for identification purposes on Earth. There's ways that a being knows, and probably all of us. I don't know why, but I feel any human being that is incarnated on Earth, you've graduated from somewhere. You've achieved something. You've met some quota. Okay? Because you cannot become conscious unless you show care. Unless some point in your... See, in mystical circles, let's say in metaphysical thought, there's context. So what does it mean? There's an individual self from the beginning of this life till the end of this life. There's that version of you. But then the ancient mystics and yogis who were seeking their divine remembrance would realize that there is a universal self. But this universal self did not start when you were born and when the body's going to die. This universal self started when the universe was born. People think metaphysics is just Casper movie. No. It's the suggestion that something has not closed its eyes from the beginning, even though it's opened them somewhere else new, through a new format. And this is what I'll tell the viewers. It's too easy to freaking hate. It's too easy. Because it's emotional. It's so easy to hate. A person can hate anything. You can hate temperature. And when you hate something, you're pretty much pushing it aside. You're making it stop existing. Right? Because it doesn't make sense. The world evolved 4.5 billion years. Human beings achieved this consciousness, what? Just to notice their suffering? We evolved 4.5 billion years just to see ourselves die? Nah. We evolved ourselves to realize we never could. I think what's going on is that the mind is an eternal technology or force, intelligence. The body is temporary. And the mind is playing with the body. We are non-physical space playing with physical space. And, because we are non-physical space, that's second nature, so we think we're just the body, maybe. But who knows? The world turns in many ways. And so, I will share this with the viewers. Anybody listening to me, if you have a hero, any hero, your hero could be your father, could be anybody, could be like the president. I want whoever you are, if there's a hero, if there's someone who has done something heroic, I want you to realize when the hero cannot defend itself, the people become the hero. The people become the hero of the heroes that cannot protect themselves, even though they have protected others. So this is it, dear viewers. Now it has come a time where the heroism, the whole species needs to show heroism for its heroes. And the heroes need to immediately run to the archetype of benevolence. There is no greater powerful being than benevolence. I am telling you, if you are a poor benevolent person, you have a greater power in this world than a cruel, very wealthy, cruel person. And let me tell you why. Because your eyes get to see a bigger world than theirs. You see, this is the problem with evil. It's fun in the short term, but in the long term, you have shackled yourself. It's like you've attached an anchor and thrown the anchor into the ocean and are trying to swim up the surface. Do you see? That's the problem with evil. Evil doesn't care about the future. The good does. And this is why the good is in the administrative position in the driver's seat. This is why evil till the end of time will act. But we will ask, evil, who are you performing in front of? And it's the good. And you know, I think it's this hilarious thing that good people are in an indirect subconscious romance with evil people, and evil people are in a subconscious romance with good people. You know? And there was a time where I was thinking, why is it like an evil person, right, is more attractive than a good person? I thought about that. Why? You know? Why is evil more attractive than good? And you know what I realized? It's because we've made, or at least in the old world, kind of convinced that in some sense it's as if, I don't know, but I have this impression that a lot of religious people on this planet are being raised having this view that, you know, sex is a vile act. Do you know? I think what it is that when it comes to goodness, there is abidance. A person has to be, like, it takes way more energy to be good than evil, you know? Because good is responsibility, so it means you have to pay attention. But evil is attractive because evil doesn't seem to have an obligation of behavior, but good does, right? Good has there's this code of conduct, but is there a code of conduct for evil? Like, are there books? Like, I don't know. Maybe there have been. But what it is evil is self-destructive. You cannot destroy something without your mind seeing that destruction. You cannot enslave something without your mind being enslaved. Do you know? And I don't understand why the most powerful and elite people are controlling people. Like, I could, sure, if it's a money game, yeah, but, you know, it's like, why attach yourself? Why limit the moment? Do you know? Sometimes, you know what it feels like to me? It feels like the leaders of nations are like limo drivers and all the people in the nation are inside the limo. And if the limo driver drives good or bad, the people in the limo will feel it, you know? It's strange. It's kind of like we need two forces. We need the yin and the yang. Certain moments in life, the energy is directed external, you know? So in some sense, it's a yang energy. But in other situations, you know, it could be in some sense the energy is directed internally, not externally. Oh my God. All right, I'm going to read some hero quotes. Go into a quote tunnel and end this off. Mitch Hedberg. My belt holds my pants up, but the belt loops hold my belt up. I don't really know what's happening down there. Who is the real hero? Ralph Waldo Emerson. A hero is no braver than an ordinary man, but he is brave 5 minutes longer. Yeah, in that 5 minutes, the hero's actually reevaluating the situation. See, that's the thing. When we react, we don't know what we're reacting to. But when we respond, we know. We know like what we're engaging. Anyways, Bob Riley. Hard times don't create heroes. It is during the hard times when the hero within us is revealed. Incredible sentence. Joseph Campbell. A hero is someone who has given his or her life to something bigger than oneself. Plato. A hero is born among 100. A wise man is found among 1,000. But an accomplished one might not be found even among 100,000 men. Bob Dylan. A hero is someone who understands the responsibility that comes with his freedom. Wow. There you go. And we have a freedom to, in some sense, be the heroes for our heroes. You know? Chadwick Boseman. This name is familiar. Chadwick Boseman. Yeah, I think this is the Black Panther actor. So guys, this quote is from Black Panther. The only difference between a hero and the villain is that the villain chooses to use that power in a way that is selfish and hurts other people. Yeah, because it's how you use it. You have been given a life. How you use it will suggest whether you enjoy it or not. You know? And the most important thing is, it's like an all-you-can-eat buffet, and you can't eat everything, so a person has to be content with their decisions. There's been moments where I've been alone, and there was nobody there, and I just felt I had to be like my own hero. You know? I felt like nobody gave a shit about me other than me. You know, so it's as if, like, you know, and when you treat yourself like a hero, it's not like, you know, like Conan the Barbarian. You know? It's more like realizing that in nature, the ability to handle situations is given. Or why else would naturally the situation arise? You know? The next quote is from someone called Tecumseh. I think maybe this is some native chief. When your time comes to die, be not like those whose hearts are filled with fear of death, so that when their time comes, they weep and pray for a little more time to live their lives over again in a different way. Sing your death song and die like a hero going home. Oh, man. Christopher Reeve. A hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. Alexander Hamilton. There is a certain enthusiasm in liberty that makes human nature rise above itself in acts of bravery and heroism. So this is something I would encourage maybe people like Jordan Peterson, you know, Ben Shapiro, to kind of consider about, you know, this the whole younger generation that is having issues with its identity. You see, the opportunities for heroism have been limited. You know, it's as if like people don't have a chance to live for something beyond themselves, and if most people are, it's usually ideological. So I wondered, why does religion have an allure? You know, like so many scientists are like, yo, we're teaching science, but you know, why are religions increasing? You know, and it's not just because of populations increasing. They're increasing because it's not enough to just understand the world. You're an energy. This energy has to go somewhere. It feel like we will feel complete if it goes somewhere, right? And the thing is that in religion, you are serving the creator. Do you see? It's as if like human beings were smart enough to give an absolute value and then serve that absolute value so they could feel absolute. Religion is one of the most incredible strategies for a creature in the void to put itself on a path of ascension, but not like a mystical ascension, in the path of having a top hierarchical position, right? Having a top of the hierarchy, you know? Because this world is so big and so many unexpected things happen that to just bear it alone is a very heavy burden. Like you got to really sit down and articulate it and accept certain things about it to be like, okay, I can endure this, you know, but what I'm trying to say is that people, it's like, just like the creatures evolving into something else, now that it has become conscious, I feel it wants to serve and evolve. It doesn't want it doesn't want to evolve unconsciously, you know? This is why I think the whole concept of earning and achievement is very important to the human being. You know, it's like we want to get there. We don't want it to just be given, right? Like the person doesn't want to just teleport on top of Mount Everest and say, I climbed Mount Everest, you know? Arthur Ashe, true heroism is remarkably sober, very undramatic. It is not the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost, but the urge to serve others at whatever cost. Yeah, because, you know, I articulate it like this. Okay, I'm alive once, right? And I'm serving myself, right? But I also have the rare opportunity to serve more than myself, right? And I thought to myself, okay, what kind of being am I? Am I trying to help the humanity to help the human species as a being that is in some sense not advanced? Or a being that feels the advancement is here and not only one person deserves it, but the whole species? Do you understand? We have to we have to understand that the victory of the species is one of the greatest victories of the individual. And if you're someone who has lived for others and you feel the world hasn't seen you, trust me, the universe has. Anyways, thanks for listening, dear viewers. I'll read one more quote. It's from George F. Kennan. Heroism is endurance for one moment more. So whoever you are in this life, you know, it's like there's an emotional wheel. Different things happen. There's going to be moments where you're going to feel like you have enough. You can trust your ability. There's going to come moments where you can't trust your ability. There's going to come moments where you fear physical things, and there might come a moment where you feel subjects instead of objects, right? But what it is to realize that the fear doesn't have a soul. You have a soul. You have a force. You have a power. The fear is coming from how your power is interpreting itself. Now, I'm not saying be delusional. I'm not saying like, you know, walk in a minefield and think nothing's going to happen. But I'm saying like, ask yourself, try to, at least this is what I'm doing. Some moments where I get frightened, I ask myself why. Like why did I get frightened? Okay, then I get this feeling, okay, I could have lost something. And then I think about, okay, what could I have lost? Like, what would the value of that loss be? And to me, to be honest, it feels like death is like the most empty-handed we can a being's gonna be, right? It's kind of weird. Like, we're born in a world filled with stuff, and we can enjoy and play and experience the stuff, but at the end we gotta, you know, I feel kind of like the higher dimensions hold our hand and take us away from the playground. You know, it's like the parents take the kid away from the playground, right? The human beings that have been sponsored to be conscious agents in this realm, most likely they will return. Do you know? It's not advanced. The thing about Earth is that because it's what we think we have only, is we're like, okay, this is how advanced it is. But our inner realms are seeing ahead. People are like, yo, we need proof for time travel, you know? And I'll be like, yeah, sci-fi writers and people, historians. There you go. We internally travel through time, see a probability of ourselves. If we like it, we accept it and we become it. And the thing is, people think they have only choice in the outer realms. You have an inner choice. You can not just choose out of the things you look at, you can choose how to look at things. And this requires your own observation, because who can teach you how to move your own eyes? You know, nobody can teach you what you are. Somebody can teach them what they are, right? It's kind of like what Galileo says. You cannot teach anyone anything. You can make them realize it from within. Anyways, protect your heroes, dear viewers. You know, right now in the news, people who have the potential for good. It's kind of like, we can choose to see the angel and devil in everyone. In the movie Godfather, the guy was the head of a mafia boss. He was a mafia boss, but he would play with his grandchild and make the grandchild laugh like a good grandfather. You know what I mean? There's many angles to people. I don't want to say there's many faces, but I would say there's many angles. There's many ways that we're existing to ourselves and our experience. And let me tell you something incredible. When you care for someone, it's in some sense like being capable of seeing their humanism. Sometimes I go on YouTube comments, not my own, but, different. So I check my own too, But sometimes I've read comments of other videos of other people, and it's kind of like incomplete analysis. We're fighting over incomplete analysis of each other. Because we can't say we don't know, and because we think we have to know, Sorry, guys. I got distracted for a second. Where was I going with this? Yeah, I just saw something. Tension totally drifted. Anyways, sorry about that, guys. Protect your heroes. They need heroes too. To be a hero, the advice is just be braver for 5 more minutes. And my understanding is this. Pretty much they say patience is a virtue. And why it's a virtue? Because we get to look at the situation from more angles before we decide. It took me a while, but I've learned to acknowledge everybody as an unknown, every person I see as an unknown being. And then they are revealing to me how I can know them. But ultimately, it's like there's an unknown presence within the moment. It's beautiful. You know why? Because we're walking in a world, but there's a world inside us, behind our eyes. We are literally like a portal. Human beings are walking portals. Anyways, thanks for listening, guys. And I'm sure, I feel it, that the world will not only take care of its heroes, but it will in some sense allow many heroes to arise and come forth. Why? Because the planet's here to meet us too. It's not just people. The universe is like, think of it as if you opening your eyes in this world, it's as if you've come to meet an ancient friend. The poet Hafiz has one of the most beautiful quotes. He wrote it 700 years ago. He says, "One regret, dear world, I wish not to have on my deathbed is that I did not kiss you enough." You see, survival makes us think life is just karma yoga. Knowledge makes us think it's Raja yoga. But the karma, the work, the knowledge is all there to come to the conclusion that love is a free state. So if you love yourself, your sense of self goes towards freedom. If you love your world goes towards freedom. If you love others, others go to freedom. And the challenge is to be able to see all these three at once. If somebody says, Mr. Within, existentially, what's your value? I'll be like, everybody has the same existential value. Everybody's existing. It's our experience and what we do with our consciousness. So it doesn't matter who you are. Life is kind of like a noun and a verb. Okay? It's like we acknowledge our identity. We identify as nouns, but we're living like verbs. Anyways, I'm someone who, in my youth, I've had a lot of moments where I've had my self-worth diminish. I've had people nullify my identity. I've even had my twin brother, nullify my identity. Just different people, just different. When I say nullify, like I've experienced enough moments of imperfection that after a while, the imperfection isn't imperfection anymore. It's kind of like, if you can be blissful when you're with yourself, then it doesn't matter what world they put you in, or where they put you. That bliss is accessible. And everybody could use a bit of help, you know. This is what I'm realizing, you know. The human being at best, okay, sure, it becomes expert in certain fields, but, you know, it's like, if there were like, I'm thinking like if there were, imagine like a group of 10 people could see each other's blind spots, for example. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, anyways, what did I write in the subtitle? Let me see. I wrote acknowledging all angles. Yeah. And see, this is not important. I mean, you should be capable of acknowledging all the angles to yourself, all the angles to the others, like at least try to fathom it. Right? I mean, it's impossible to know all the angles to others, but you know what I mean. Right? Try to see as much as you can. And you know what it is? It's kind of like, ultimately we're left to do the best we can and then watch. What else can we do? We try our best. We do what we feel is right. And then we're like, okay, I did something. You know, I hope the celebrities on... I have a feeling, I don't know why, I feel maybe in a few years, if I'm still around on this planet, it would be like, I don't know why, but I feel it's going to be a shift. I feel suddenly everybody's going to jump on the advanced civilization train, you know? Because it's the best argument. There's no greater argument. It's the one common denominator. You know, we have a common denominator based on our past, based on our present, and based on our future. You know, the past was fragmented, the present is still fragmented, the future is where, you know, it's where the space of the advanced humanity, where the space of the world awaits the advanced humanity. And, you know, I'll say this. This world is okay. There was this idea where it's as if like, kind of like fictional new sci-fi idea that like when a person dies in one timeline, they stop and then they can go and choose any other timeline, right? So imagine you incarnated on Earth in 1991, then after this lifetime you can choose to incarnate in the year, I don't know, 4025 or something. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they have that kind of idea, but I think ultimately when it comes to true enlightenment, spiritual realization, it's all about noticing that there was a truth here before you were here. That's what realization is. And that truth is, it's kind of like saying the essence of you, the essence of others, and the essence of the world is the same timeless moment. So I do have this feeling, just like from a seed a whole tree sprouts, right? I also have this feeling that this universe is it's contained. You see, like the planets as celestial objects, they have an edge, right? They're like these spheres and they have a surface. We look at the whole cosmos and we're like, we can't see the edge of the universe. Does the universe even have a surface? Like, is the whole thing contained or is it uncontained? And I would say I think it's contained, because why else would there be shape? The shape contains it. You know, even if the outside of the universe doesn't have a container, doesn't have an edge, the content inside it acts as its edge. You know? And it's this hilarious thing that it could be that when we are born as a human being, that's when we are limited. You know? Maybe before being born, the limitations are not, there is no concept like that. Maybe. You know, I've been under the impression that there's many dehumanized states. You know, a person can go in an empty room and think it's empty, but how do you know? You know? There could be a dehumanized consciousness there. Even animals, like animals are dehumanized consciousness. Or you could see the human consciousness as a sort of animal consciousness. Anyways. You know what? I feel like singing a mantra. I don't know why. And even though my throat hurts, but I think the last time I did one of these was like 2015. All right. So the mantra is going to be Om. Feel free to say it with me if you like.